Welcome to Live Interactive English. I'm Matt.
And I'm Sam.
And today we're looking at day 2 of our epic poem, Odyssey. And, we're talking about Odyssey today because it's actually been in, the news a little bit recently. Because the news is that next year there will be a film about Odyssey called The Odyssey.
Okay, I was gonna say, because this is kind of an older story, and again, it's a story that you really would read kind of in your English class in America, and I'm not even sure if it's still like a required reading anymore or not. So I was kind of thinking, this seems like an interesting topic that we've randomly decided to talk about, but if there's a movie coming out, now that makes more sense because now we want to know a little bit about the story before we go watch the movie so we can have some idea if we think it'll be interesting to us or not.
Yeah, well, this movie, I think, should be good no matter what because the director is Christopher Nolan, who you might know from other movies like Inception or Tenet or even Oppenheimer. So these are all very big, expensive movies with lots of very famous actors in them. And this Odyssey movie will be no different because it's starring big actors like Matt Damon and Tom Holland and even Charlize Theron.
Wow, so this movie is gonna be like a pretty epic movie if they're gonna have spend that much money on the cast alone. They're probably going to create something really good, especially with this director who has been kind of known to do those kind of long, epic movies. I mean, even just trying to remember Inception, like that had so many awesome scenes and interesting stuff. Then him taking on the Odyssey should be quite interesting.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to seeing that next year. But first, we're gonna learn more about the story itself. So let's get into it after this.
The next morning, Polyphemus removed the boulder from the cave's entrance so that his sheep could graze outside. As they left, the now blind Cyclops felt the tops of his sheep to make sure the men weren't escaping. However, little did he know that Odysseus and his men were hanging on to the bottom of the sheep and being carried outside to safety. Once back on their ships, Odysseus and his men again set out for home. Their journey took them many years and saw them encounter more frightening creatures, including a 6-headed monster, a witch goddess, and the famous sirens. Only the king himself survived these trials, and when he finally got back to Ithaca, he was alone.
All right, so we are on Odyssey day 2, and if you remember, we just left off with Odysseus and his men. They're in a cave with a Cyclops, and they have just blinded the Cyclops, and now, though, they need to get out. So, as we see in the next part of our story, it says, the next morning, Polyphemus removed the boulder from the cave's entrance so that his sheep could graze outside. So again, this Cyclops actually seems pretty nice too. He's got these men kind of trapped in this cave, but he still wants his sheep to be able to go outside. So even though he's blinded, he moves the boulder. The sheep go outside so they can eat some grass. And let's see, do the guys escape or not?
Okay, well, continuing with the story. As they left, and that means the they means the sheep, the now blind Cyclops felt the tops of his sheep to make sure the men weren't escaping. Okay, so he's feeling the backs of the sheep, the what is it, the fur?
Yeah, the wool.
The wool, that's right, on the sheep, to see that there are no men riding the sheep out, but that it's only sheep that are going out to graze.
But we have Odysseus, and he's a little bit smarter, so it says, however, little did he know that Odysseus and his men were hanging on to the bottom of the sheep and being carried outside to safety. So they are hanging on the bottom of the sheep so that when the Cyclops feels the top, he cannot feel anybody there. And so they get carried off to safety.
Okay, continuing with the article, or with the story. Once back on their ships, Odysseus and his men again set out for home. Okay, so once they are finally safely back on their ships, they can leave or set out. So when you set out for something, it means you leave from one place to go to another place, and you can set out for a destination such as home. So they're leaving to go home.
Yes, and so they're still trying to get back to Ithaca, and it's still gonna be quite a journey because this book has lots of adventure in it. And so we see it says, their journey took them many years and saw them encounter more frightening creatures, including a six-headed monster, a witch goddess, and the famous sirens. So yes, we have this word, the famous sirens, and you might have heard this kind of character or creature before. A siren is usually a kind of a girl creature that lives in the ocean, that sings very beautifully and that lures the sailors to them, and then they usually take them underwater. And I don't know if they eat them or just drown them. I'm not really sure. I don't remember what sirens exactly do.
I think the ships crash into the rocks where the sirens are singing from, and that causes their ship to sink and the sailors to drown.
Yes, so they just want to cause havoc and disaster and kill everybody, apparently. Because again, Greek mythology, there's lots of this kind of creatures and mythical beasts and all of that.
So sirens are one of the beasts that they encounter, but they encountered many others. So to encounter someone or something means to come across unexpectedly or to meet unexpectedly. So you might encounter someone when you're out at doing some shopping and you didn't plan to see them, but you saw them anyway, so you just encountered them. So for example, I encountered my old English teacher when I was out shopping. All right, continuing with the story, only the king himself survived these trials. And when he finally got back to Ithaca, he was alone.
Hello， 大家好，我是 Hanny， 今天要继续读 Odyssey 奥德赛的故事。那隔天早上，独眼巨人把巨石从洞口移开，让他的羊到外面吃草。那现在已经失明的巨人，他就有去摸羊的背部，确保这一群人没有跟着出去。但是他不知道的是，奥德修斯跟他的士兵是抓着羊的腹部，然后顺利逃跑了。这边有一个重点是 Little did somebody know that... 是表达某人不知道什么什么。那这是倒装句型，我们把表示否定的副词 little 移到句首作为强调，后面接助动词 did， 再接主词去表达某人压根不知道什么什么，某人完全没想到什么什么。举例来说， Little did Mary know that one day she would become a politician. Mary 完全没想到有一天她会成为政治人物。好，那么奥德修斯这群人回到船上，再次启程返乡。旅程花了很多年，那途中也遇到很多可怕生物，有包括著名的赛莲。那最后就只有国王一个人幸存下来，回到伊萨卡。单字 encounter 它是动词，表示遭遇或者是偶然遇到。而文中有提到 siren， 它是希腊神话当中的赛莲，常常被描绘成一种半鸟半女人的怪物，用悦耳的歌声来迷惑水手，使船触礁。这时候 Sam 老师有用到 lure 这个动词 L-U-R-E， lure 它表示吸引或是引诱。老师还用到 havoc。H-A-V-O-C， 那这个名词可以表达大破坏或是混乱。好，接话课文中。
Okay, so we finally made it to Ithaca, but our 12 ships of men are all gone, and only Odysseus is left. So I guess, hooray that he got home, but at what cost? I don't know. But then again, where else was he going to go? They had to get home eventually. They had to at least try because there wasn't really nowhere else for them to go. The war was over. They needed to get back.
All right, well, I guess we'll see what he does now that he is back in Ithaca after this break.
Upon arriving in his kingdom, Odysseus disguised himself as a beggar and spied on his old palace to see how things had changed. To his dismay, he found his home full of suitors who were trying to marry Penelope and steal his crown. As he was investigating the palace, he came across Telemachus and revealed his true identity to him. Together, the father and son entered the palace the next day and killed all of the suitors. Odysseus then told Penelope who he really was and embraced her. Odysseus had made it home.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were looking at this story, the Odyssey, and we had just found out that Odysseus and his men had managed to escape from the Cyclops by holding on to the bottom of sheep as they went out to graze. But after they did that, they faced many more challenges and many different monsters that they had to battle to get past. And by the time Odysseus finally got back home to Ithaca, he was alone because he was the only one who had survived.
Yes, so it's definitely been an epic journey and an epic battle throughout all these different places, and finally he is home, and so everything's gonna be wonderful and great, right? Well, upon arriving in his kingdom, Odysseus disguised himself as a beggar and spied on his old palace to see how things had changed. So clearly, Odysseus is a little bit worried that something might have happened. Again, he left a wife and a young son to go off to war. So he wants to double check, is my palace still okay? I'm gonna disguise myself as a beggar first to double check that everything is fine. And so this word disguise, this verb just means to change your appearance or change somebody's appearance to something else so that you can try to be hidden or you can try to pretend to be something else. You might disguise yourself if you are going into war. You might wear camouflage and try to hide and not be able to be seen. You might disguise yourself when you go somewhere just because you don't want people to know it's you. You might wear a mask, and like famous people might wear masks and sunglasses and a hat to try to disguise themselves so that people won't see them. And our example sentence says, Jill disguised herself as a housekeeper and entered the hotel. What is Jill doing? Why is she disguising herself and trying to get into a hotel? Who knows?
Well, who knows? But here we have Odysseus disguising himself as a beggar. So a beggar is a person who begs or asks for money from other people. So usually it'll be someone who does not have money of their own. They don't have a job usually, so they need to ask other people to give them money so that they can continue to live and have the things that they need to survive. So for example, I gave money to a beggar so he could buy some food. All right, back to our story. To his dismay, he found his home full of suitors who were trying to marry Penelope and steal his crown.
Okay.
So to his dismay, he was unhappy to see that it wasn't what he wanted to see. So that's when we say to someone's dismay.
Yeah, so at least it's slightly better. He comes and sees them trying to marry Penelope instead of already having Penelope be married. So I guess it's a little bit better than it could be. But he wanted to see what was going on first before he just says, hello, I'm back and everything. So he sees that there are many suitors trying to marry Penelope. And a suitor is just a male who is trying to pursue or to go after a female to marry. And so we've got men. In this case, we have Penelope, who is the woman that everybody would like to marry because she is, the queen, and they want to also be the king of Ithaca. And now she has many male suitors. Many men are lined up, and they are all trying to win her heart and saying, please marry me, or I will give you this if you marry me, or I'll write you a love poem, please marry me. So lots of suitors, but I think that Penelope is not so interested.
奥德修斯一抵达王国后，就把自己乔装成乞丐，暗中监视自己以前的宫殿，看看变了多少。让他郁闷的是，他发现家里挤满了想要娶他的妻子，并且窃夺他王位的求婚者。好，单字 disguise 这个动词表示伪装、乔装或是装扮。Disguise oneself as 可以表达把自己乔装成什么什么。这时候 Sam 老师有提到 camouflage 这个字 camouflage camouflage 可以表达动植物的伪装保护色。下一个单字 beggar 就是乞丐， suitor 则是指追求者、求婚者。那这边有一个重点是，我们用 once 以及 upon 都可以表达一怎么样就怎么样。once 是连接词，相当于 as soon as， 后面是接子句。upon 则是介系词，相当于 on， 后面要接名词或动名词。那我们看个例句 ：Emma burst into tears once she heard the news。也可以说 Upon hearing the news, Emma burst into tears. Emma 一听到消息就突然开始哭了起来。好，接话课文中。
All right, so we are back with Odysseus, and it says, as he was investigating the palace, he came across Telemachus and revealed his true identity to him. So again, if you remember, Telemachus is his son. Now he must be all grown up. And I'm not sure he would know what his dad looks like, but he does say, I am your father. Like, let's go try to figure out what's going on with mom and figure things out.
All right, so he came across his son while investigating the palace. So to investigate is to look very closely at something or to follow steps to try to find the cause or reason for something. So often with things like crimes, the police or detectives will have to investigate to find out, who did it. So, for example, the police arrived at the crime scene and began to investigate it.
Yes, and then we had this other word, reveal. To reveal something just means to uncover it, to uncover the truth, to uncover the secret, to uncover the box that was under a blanket. So if you reveal something, you take something that was hidden and you make it known or seen or anything like that. So here in our sentence it says, my sister would not reveal the secret no matter how much I asked. So I wanted to know, she wouldn't tell me.
All right, getting back to the story. Together, the father and son entered the palace the next day and killed all of the suitors.
Okay. Lots of death in the Odyssey, that's for sure. So it says, Odysseus then told Penelope who he really was and embraced her. Odysseus had made it home. So he didn't tell her first. He just walked in and killed everybody and then said, surprise, I'm your husband. But of course, there was a happy reunion after that.
奥德修斯在调查宫殿时遇到他儿子，于是就向他透露真实身份。隔天，这对父子就一起进入宫殿，杀死所有的求婚者，然后再向妻子来表明他的身份，并拥抱他。经过这么多年，他们终于团聚了。老师用到 reunion 这个字 ，reunion，reunion 可以表达团聚或是重逢。而单字 investigate 它表示调查、审查，是个动词。reveal 则是表达揭露、透露或者是展现、显示。那么 Sam 老师在解释单字时有用到 uncover， 在 cover 前面加上否定字首 un， 那它表示揭露、发现或是发掘。好，接话课文中。
Okay, we have a what do you think question, and it says, why do you think Odysseus kept going?
Well, I think the fact that he had a wife and son at home is, enough reason for him to need to make it home. So he needed to overcome all of these things like these monsters and cyclopses because you just need to get home.
Yes, I would agree with that. And also I think because he's also the king of Ithaca, so that the fact that he also needs to take care of his people probably encouraged him to keep going no matter what he had to face and finally make it home.
All right, well, we have finally made it to the end of this. So that's all for today. We'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.
The next morning, Polyphemus removed the boulder from the cave's entrance so that his sheep could graze outside. As they left, the now blind Cyclops felt the tops of his sheep to make sure the men weren't escaping. However, little did he know that Odysseus and his men were hanging on to the bottom of the sheep and being carried outside to safety. Once back on their ships, Odysseus and his men again set out for home. Their journey took them many years and saw them encounter more frightening creatures, including a 6-headed monster, a witch goddess, and the famous sirens. Only the king himself survived these trials, and when he finally got back to Ithaca, he was alone. Upon arriving in his kingdom, Odysseus disguised himself as a beggar and spied on his old palace to see how things had changed. To his dismay, he found his home full of suitors who were trying to marry Penelope and steal his crown. As he was investigating the palace, he came across Telemachus and revealed his true identity to him. Together, the father and son entered the palace the next day and killed all of the suitors. Odysseus then told Penelope who he really was and embraced her. Odysseus had made it home.
最后，我们来复习今天课文里面的单字文法。单字的部分有 encounter 是动词，表示遭遇、偶然遇到。disguise 也是动词，表示伪装、乔装或是装扮。beggar 是名词，表示乞丐。investigate 这个动词表示调查、审查。reveal 这个动词则表示揭露、透露、展现或显示。那文法的部分，第一个我们学到 Little did somebody know that 表达某人不知道怎么样怎么样。注意这是倒装句型 ，little 移到句首当强调，那么助动词 did 是要摆在主词前面哦。第二个文法学到 once 和 upon 都可以指一怎么样就怎么样，那要注意 once 是连接词，后面接子句 ，upon 是介系词，后面是接名词或动名词。那以上就是今天的讲解，同学别走开，马上回来哦。
Oh, I'm so bored. Where's Winnie? Bored, you say? I have just the thing for you. It's time to play some badminton.
Play badminton. Do you see a court or a net, Winnie?
Silly Kiki. You don't need a net or a court to play badminton. You can also practice the skills for badminton.
Oh, like your different serves or different hand strokes?
Yeah. Okay, so enough chat. Let's go. Let's go.
In badminton, you need a badminton racket as well as a birdie or a shuttlecock.
This is a backhand. This is an overhand. Well, now you know you don't need a net or a court to play some badminton.
That's right. But don't forget to follow us on our Instagram. And also, if you want to know how to say something in English, you can DM us or email us. Winnie, anything else?
See you on the next one.
Kiwi later.